about business journalism in higher education. And our Desi Hanford, who's also our conference committee chair, did a great job helping put this conference together. She'll be moderating this panel, along with Marty Steffens, one of our past presidents and such a good friend to Cebu, who's always there for us, Michelle LaRoche, Alan Deutschman, and Jeffrey Timmermans. Come to the stage. We are ready for you. Come on up. Following this, folks, we'll do a quick closing session. I have some remarks if you could stick around for that, and then our board meeting is following that. So please take your seats. Desi right here on the right, and the rest of the guests can fill in. Take it right away, Desi.
Professor at Northwestern University and a board member here at Cebu. And I'm thrilled to be on stage with my colleagues. They'll all introduce themselves. I'll say before I came to Medill, I worked as a business reporter for Dow Jones Newswires for about 10 years.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle LaRoche. I should say my official title, just to give credit where it's due. I'm the Baldwin Chair in Business and Financial Journalism. It's a position that was funded through a generous donation by a man named Ken Baldwin. And I teach business journalism and intermediate reporting, to our students in University of South Carolina. Before joining South Carolina, I worked at Dow Jones Newswires and the Wall Street Journal in various editorial capacities.
Hi, my name is Jeff Timmermans. I'm the Donald W. Reynolds Chair in Business Journalism at the Cronkite School at the Arizona State University. I'm a recent arrival back to the States. I taught for about 10 years at the University of Hong Kong, where I oversaw the undergraduate journalism program there. Before that, I also was a journalist, and believe it or not, I worked for Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal for many years with these guys. So there's a pattern here. But I think that's by way of saying that Dow Jones, and especially the wires, is a fantastic way of getting started in journalism. Certainly I learned a lot. At Arizona State, I oversee the business journalism classes and the Reynolds Center for Business Journalism. So pleasure to be here with you guys today.
Hi, I'm Marty Steffens, and for the last 20 years, I've been the Cebu Chair at the University of Missouri, celebrating my 20th anniversary this year, actually. So before I came to Mizzou and teaching and working a lot with Cebu, I was editor of the executive editor of the San Francisco Examiner, and a lot of career, mostly in editing positions and supervising positions, but I did work on the business desk of the LA Times, so that was a terrific career. And my Dow Jones things is for years I judged the Clabby Awards, which were the awards for Dow Jones Newswires.
Hi, I'm Alan Deutschman. I'm the Donald Reynolds Professor of Business Journalism at the University of Nevada-Reno. I started my career at Fortune magazine in New York and then in San Francisco covering Silicon Valley. Also worked for Fast Company, Vanity Fair, wrote the business column for GQ, New York Magazine, and our chairs are both funded by the same foundation, the Reynolds Foundation, which has also funded business journalism chairs at Arizona State and Missouri.
As well.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about kind of the missing pipeline of business journalists, but fortunately, the five of us know that there is a pipeline for business journalists. So I think we could talk about what we hear from our students. Why are they interested in business journalism? Like what pulls them to that? We heard a lot of wonderful things from other speakers about jobs and salaries, but what are you hearing about why your students are interested in it? And is there a particular aspect of business journalism that they're interested in? Want to go?
Well, certainly, our students have had a great opportunity to be exposed to business journalism. Mizzou has not one but two business journalism professors, and we get them early and we get them often. So right at the beginning of their, even when they're touring with their parents, The best thing I ever did was put up a bulletin board that said, great careers in business journalism. And the parents and the students that kind of look at it and kind of go like, oh, and they see all these people working all over the world that are our alums. So immediately right then and there. And then the next way we kind of get them to kind of understand the breadth of business journalism is all of our students are required to take an economics class as part of their journalism requirement. Well, I convinced the economics department in 2008 to let me co-teach that class. And so we, you know, indoctrinate them right there during econ, you know, their freshman econ, sophomore econ class, you know, they do that. And so they really get an idea. And so then the last thing is the trips. They hear that the class contains a trip to New York. And they go like, all right, I'm there, you know, and so, but then we go to all kinds of different publications, let them see the business of beauty, the you know, sports, and how a business education grounding really makes them be better any kind of reporter, even if they decide to go into city government or, you know, and certainly Washington coverage. So you know, they get that indoctrination early on, and so there's not a lot of hard sell once we do that. So,
That's great to hear.
And of course, we have our own, thanks to Randy Smith and the Reynolds Chair, we have our own outlet called Missouri Business Alerts, and a lot of our students get paid to work during their college year. So not at all too much of a hard sell. And then, of course, the frequent guest speakers that we have come in to talk a little about.
Before Jeffrey, sorry, what areas are they interested in, Marty? Are they personal finance? Are they thinking crypto? Like,
you know,
what are they
personal
thinking about?
finance is probably the toughest area, I think, because they haven't had enough life experience. Now, we do participate in the NEFI blogging program, which kind of helps. And then I made that an assignment for the econ kids. And I was asking the other day, what was your favorite part of the class? And they said, really like the headlines that you talk about all the time, but also being able to talk about our own personal finance. So I think it's early exposure, and once they get a chance to do that. So, but not one of them will raise their hand and say, I want to become a personal finance reporter. They do want to cover the business of sports or the business of government,
Right.
or the market, of course.
I mean, from my perspective, it's been interesting to see the difference from Hong Kong to the States. And in Hong Kong, at the university where I taught there, the kids just got the importance of business and financial journalism. And part of it is because Hong Kong is such an international, or was such an international place, and you know, business dominated the economy. Here it's been quite a bit different. I mean, I am finding that it is a bit more of a hard sell. And my students in Arizona have this fear almost of business journalism, a lot of them. They think it's all about, you know, money and rich people and you know, numbers and math and economics. And it's really been a struggle to show them, well, you know, you need to be numerically literate, but you don't have to be an economist. You don't need all of that math skills necessarily. It's really about the people, and it's about ordinary people, and these are the people that need business and financial news more than anybody, right? It's not the wealthy, well-informed investor. It's the people who are investing in GameStop because they don't, you know any better. That's who we need to help. And that's kind of, I think, important to make sure our pipeline continues, is that the kids need to understand if this affects you. And we need business journalists who truly, truly represent the audience.
I think I'm the most junior faculty member on this stage. I just finished my 4th year of teaching. And so I'm just trying to figure this out. How do I convince students to take my classes? And what I've found is that the students themselves are the best advertisement for the class. The ones who take the class, sort of venture in and think they want to try this, they're not sure, they're really nervous, they're definitely afraid of business, they're afraid they're not going to understand it. But I find that word of mouth helps a lot, where students will tell each other, this is the most valuable class I've taken. This is a class that is going to help me no matter what I do in my future. And they kind of inherently understand that. And then the other thing that I think has been really helpful is to see some early wins, to see other students succeed. And the students want to succeed like their peers are succeeding. And that is really what has been feeding the program. So I have someone who is working right now with NPR's Planet Money. One of our students is going to be an intern at the Journal this summer. Others have landed really interesting like business development beats in local and regional newspapers. And that is kind of how it starts to feed on itself, is that success. And that's where partnering with the newsrooms really becomes an important piece, is for you to recognize our student talent, which will help us become a feeder for those newsrooms well into the future.
I might be the outlier here. I feel like our students really don't know anything about business journalism and come into either undergraduate or the master's program really not knowing anything, not having a particular interest. A lot of students take my business journalism course because they took a previous course with me, either my magazine writing course or I teach a required first semester master's course, and then so they like me as a professor, and they're like, what else do you teach? I'm going to steal all of Marty's ideas. I've been taking good notes here. So it's definitely an issue for us. I mean, we totally have students who want to do sports journalism or Hollywood or government. I mean, often for business journalism, we can kind of siphon off students who have an interest in like government and public affairs when they realize that business is in that same kind of area.
Yeah, I think for our undergrads, I kind of try to sneak the money aspect into maybe classes they take their sophomore year, and it'll be like the economics of the pandemic in New York or Chicago, and they're like, oh, and it's like, okay, now I know I can sneak some money and some business in there. And I think for our graduate students, they don't necessarily gravitate toward business. It's not like, sports. You say sports, and students are like, I'm going to do sports. I'm going to be on ESPN, which is great. And then if they take a business class, they're like, wow, I really learned a lot. And this is applicable to a lot of different places. And that, I think, starts to draw kind of what you were saying, Michelle. They are your best, salespeople, if you will.
Yeah, you have to get them over the hurdle first.
Yeah. Get them early and help them, understand that business affects everything. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I've been kind of offering guest lectures to pretty much anyone. Anyone need a guest lecturer? Happy to do it. So I've been teaching the freshmen, the sophomores, the grad students, any way to get in front of them and show them this stuff really matters. And sexy stuff like scandals, that's great stuff. Yeah.
It's that conflict, right?
Yeah.
It's that conflict in journalism that pulls people into stories. And money, I always tell my students there are three things that polite people don't talk about. It's sex, money, and religion. I'm like, and you're going to talk about at least one of those in this class. And they're like, okay, that's all right. So it works out. One of the things that I hear from students, particularly undergraduates, when they say, I'm interested in business journalism, but, and there's that but. And I hear them say, but I don't want to have to major in journalism and economics because I really don't want to do economics any more than I necessarily have to. And then, we talk about how you don't have to be a double major and you don't have to take all these econ classes. And they will learn on the job, right? They will learn from other reporters and they will learn from other editors. I'm curious as to what all of you hear about what are some of the concerns or the worries that they may, students have in taking business journalism.
Math, right? I don't want to do math. I can't do math. And so we talk about Excel and about how it's your best friend when you need to do math. But just like anything, I try to tell them it's more about the story. The math is a tool, and you can learn certain things, and it's going to be fine. Like we talk about the growth mindset and learning how to understand that they can get better at something, even if it's something they haven't been good at. They don't have to be a mathematician, but that is definitely one of the first things that comes up.
Yeah. And my pet peeve is economics, particularly the way economics is taught at the undergraduate level. I think one of the joys about being a business and financial journalist is you use economics as an applied tool. That's what it was supposed to be. That's how it was formed when, Marshall and those guys actually created the discipline. And no offense if anyone's an economist, but at the undergraduate level, it's taught at a very theoretical level and very formula heavy, very math heavy. And for me and a lot of people, it takes all the joy out of it. And that's, I think, one reason why kids are nervous about business and financial journalism. They equate it with the way they were taught economics, if they were taught economics. And that's, that's a shame. That's why I'm thrilled that you're teaching. I gotta do that too.
Well, how I started teaching it is because early on in the job, I started recruiting students. We would have this little, job interest fair. And people would come up and say, exactly your point, business economics, I hated economics. Why would I want to report on economics? And so I realized it was a disconnect, that economics is the lifeblood of the world now. I mean, we don't fight Russia. We give them economic sanctions, So, if you want to learn, and I use this catchphrase all the time, if you want to learn how the world works, in fact, we used to have little wristbands that said this, learn economics, And so kids would get the little wristbands and everything. And then, of course, when I teach, I have to do a lot of backfill, though, on econ and business topics. So I think I have a couple of former students in the class in here. So, I have to kind of really teach my class as a mini MBA, and I think you probably all agree with me there, just because, it's that knowledge of business. But what thing we've been recently doing is kind of give people the real confidence. And so all of our students now are Bloomberg certified when they graduate. So they're Bloomberg certified.
This is the market concepts course. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
I don't have tenure, this might get me fired, but our dean actually recruits students to the journalism program by saying, oh, you don't have to do math. Because we have a lot of students who, within the journalism school, a lot of students are interested in doing public relations, marketing communications, looking to be in a communications role in the corporate world. And a lot of them are looking to major in business, but they're afraid of the math. And our dean, our recruiter for the journalism school is like, come to this side of the quad, you won't have to do any math. And except if you take Deutschman's course. But when I get them the first day, I say, there's going to be math in this course, I have to warn you. And so let me just make sure you have the math skills. Can everyone add, subtract, multiply, and divide? Because you're going to need to take percentages and ratios, which involve, division and multiplication. And, my daughter's in 4th grade. She can do all of these things quite well. But, and they're like, really? Kind of thing. But, this was a conception for me starting my career. I remembered when I was interviewing for my first job as a reporter at Fortune magazine, the interview was going well, and then the chief of reporters just stared me down and was like, kid, how are you at math? And I was like, I'm just going to lose it here. And I said, well, I took one semester of calculus in college, and there was this dead silence. And then she was like, can you add? I got the job.
I have to confess, this will probably knock me back a couple pegs, but when I was hired at Dow Jones, I didn't know there was a math test. I had no idea. And thankfully, I didn't find out until after they hired me, and I didn't have to take it. And I was like, whew, okay, all right, good. But it's true. It's addition, it's subtraction, right? Multiplication.
Yeah, there's not a lot of
division,
regression analysis that you have to do for most beats.
No,
maybe.
algorithms, nothing like that. The good news is that the 5 of us, and as well as I think our audience knows, there is a pipeline for journalists, right? For business journalists, we see it. I'm curious as to what types of jobs your students are interested in, what types of jobs they're taking. Do they want big media? Do they want local media? What do they want when they're done? What are they looking for?
Our students in South Carolina are all over the map. And I think a lot of it really is guided by us. I found that many of my students, when I first arrived in South Carolina, they didn't even want me to talk about jobs outside of South Carolina. They thought, oh, well, here's this person from the big city who's going to come down and tell us why our local markets aren't good enough. But it didn't take more than a semester or two for them to start being like, well, so what is it like to work in New York City? And so I think some of it is just them suddenly seeing or being exposed to the possibilities, and they only know what they know, right? And so what I find now is that students run the gamut. Some love South Carolina and they want to stay there, and they see some really good, successful journalists making a living and doing good work in our state, and they are their role models. While others are like, I cannot wait to get out of here. I don't care where. It's like anywhere but here. And I think what's so wonderful is that business journalism is needed everywhere. And there are great jobs anywhere they might want to go, whether that's in South Carolina, New York, LA, wherever. So, and they're interested in everything, just like all of you. It's There's a lot of students who want to do technology. Some are really interested in the economy. Some are, like, they've been enamored by the stock market in the last year and a half. Who hasn't been, right? And so I think they're just like journalists everywhere else, where they are really interested in things as they come up, because they're learning. This is all so new to them. And that's to me, the most exciting part of being in a role like this, is to feed off that excitement that they still have for it.
I mean, I get a lot of students that say, oh, I want to work for the Wall Street Journal, I want to work for the New York Times, CNBC, especially in Hong Kong. And one of the things that I hope to do in my current role at ASU is to show them the incredible diversity of opportunities that exist in business and financial media. You have the American City Business Journals, for example, these great business papers in every major city. You've got the newswires, which I, of course, have an abiding love for. You've got niche publications like DebtWire, Ignites, the FT publications. There are just so many fantastic things out there. Distressed debt, my God. I mean, it's just an incredible opportunity there, and these are the publications that will train them. So I think that's another thing that I hope to do is show them where the opportunities are.
I think where people end up in their business journalism career is really highly dependent on them. And, some of them it depends on their medium. We have people at NPR or in other audio kinds of or blogs. The most interesting, and we have a lot of Bloomberg, of course, with the Journal, publications all over the country and all over the world, honestly. And we have a significant number of international Chinese students too, so they end up. And those students are particularly all over the world and in Asia as well, because we do a combination program with the Communications University of China. So, it's pretty much an international flavor. I really, kind of enjoy seeing how it really ignites people and how sometimes people come back to business coverage at times to time, and, I love to see the kid who sat in the back, didn't do particularly well, and said at the end of the class said, I really want a job in business journalism. So I remember one student got a job at the Joplin paper as a business reporter, and he ignited. He really caught fire. And I kept track of him. And then somebody from Cedar Rapids, Iowa said, hey, we're looking for a Mizzou journalist. You got somebody? And I said, yep, got somebody who's in Joplin. How about that? And absolutely. So then I got a call from a wealth management company in St. Louis saying, hey, we're looking for somebody with maybe about 4 years out. Got anybody in mind? I go, I do. And then the Fed came calling. Now he makes 6 figures plus salary as managing editor for economics at the Richmond Fed. I mean, so it's those people that really have the gamut of experience, or the student whose first job out of college was covering the music industry for the Nashville Business Journal. Can you imagine that's your first job? And so, of course, we have the broadcast student who eschewed being in broadcast because she wanted to work for Bloomberg, and now she covers the Canadian Central Bank, her first job out of college. So it's the gamut, and it's really very personally driven.
Yeah, being out west, about 2/3 of our students are from Nevada, maybe a third now from California, and it's a struggle for me to get them to come to the Northeast to try to make it in New York or Washington, D.C. I mean, I have students who've done that. I have former students at the Washington Post, at WNYC, Politico, Vanity Fair, but it's a hard sell for me. A lot of the students kind of stayed in Nevada or California to be close to family, or from that part of the country. And they weren't from the kind of culture of being in some of the elite Northeast schools where it's very geared towards going to New York, going to DC, succeeding in the big time. They don't have other students. They don't have a network there. They don't have the connections. And I tell them, I was like, go to New York, share an apartment with 6 people, bartend. It's like you can do it. You're young, you can survive. You can eat a half a burrito for lunch and the other half for dinner.
You sure know how to sell it.
So, but it's been more of a struggle for us, and it's harder because there isn't as much media, regional media out west. I had a student a few years ago who was at the Las Vegas paper after college, and he had this fantastic scoop about when the Las Vegas Review-Journal was bought, and the owner was trying to keep his identity secret. And it turned out it was Sheldon Adelson, the biggest casino magnate in Vegas. And the student exposed, this billionaire who was trying to stay secret buying the dominant media property in that town. And, from that, he could have ridden his ticket and gone anywhere. And he came back to Reno because he wanted to be back near his family. He wanted to be able to, hunt and fish and all that. I was like, go to New York. It's like, you're ready. So it's a little bit more of a struggle.
It is very personal.
Can I add one thing really quick? So I was listening to everyone. I think about these moments that happen in the classroom, and I'm sure you all can relate to this. I have this image in my head, for those of you who were fans of Seinfeld. You'll remember whenever Kramer would make his entrance into the apartment, just like the door would slam open. And there is a moment every semester when this happens in my class. They're like, did you see? And whatever it is that's happening that semester. And the excitement they have when suddenly they realize this thing, business, is dramatic and interesting, and there's like fights and like all these characters, and it's like a novel but better. And this is the moment that I wish we could capitalize on. Like if we're able to give these students really cool, interesting opportunities to practice the craft of business journalism at that height of that excitement, it's like more opportunities for young people to enter the field, that's the pipeline. But if we wait too long, they've moved on to the next thing. But that Seinfeld moment, it exists in my classroom every semester. And I think we together can find a way to really capitalize on that.
I'll just add one other thing is, and we talked about this prior to coming out, B2B publications, business-to-business publications are great starting points and ending points and in-between points. There are a lot of business publications. The Journal used to pick, I don't know if it still does, but used to pick off reporters and editors from B2Bs because they're so well sourced, those reporters. They really know what they're talking about, and that's what business publications want, right? Your sources, you are as good as your sources are, and B2B reporters have really good sources.
Subject matter expertise.
Yeah, exactly. So before we go to Q&A, one last question for all of you is, how can we, as educators and former business journalists, attract more people, have those Seinfeld moments in our classroom? What can we do? What should we be doing? What can we do? And then we're going to turn to all of you in the audience and ask you the same question. But what can we do?
Go ahead.
Well, basically, one of the things my students tell me a lot is that you have such passion for this. And passion is infectious. And so when you can kind of talk about how exciting it is to be in business journalism, when you bring Tim Higgins in to talk about his book on Apple, when you can, have the smile on somebody's face when they've kind of finished their Bloomberg certification. But the coolest thing is when they get to come to New York and walk in these newsrooms and kind of see people working, then they can really see themselves in that job. So, so we are the people who make things possible. Thank you for my career. Thank you for mentioning. Thank you for standing by me. Thank you for, for telling me. There was my proudest moments are sometimes kids who don't even take my business reporting class. Paul Schlesser was in my media models class, which is a media economics class, and he was graduating, searching for a job. He says, I meant to take your business reporting class. And I go, that's okay, you're here now. And he's looking for a job, and I said, and I knew him, and I knew how thorough he was. And so one of those B2B publications called Endpoints News came to me. They said, we're looking for a bright young reporter who really has stick to it, They trained him to cover pharma industry. And now he loves it because he gets to work remotely. He gets to choose where he lives. He gets up at 5:30 in the morning, to cover the morning breaking stories. He's done by 2 o'clock. He loves that lifestyle. So he loves his pay. I think, his starting pay is around $60K. So loving that for being able to live at home and not have any commute costs. And, and the other thing that also makes people passionate is when you tell them that the average kind of salary for business journalists in New York is at least 80K and often 6 figures. So that also sells them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
Infectious passion and helping the students understand that that could be them. I think a lot of my students at Arizona State, we have a high percentage of people of color as students. They just don't see themselves in those roles. And part of it, I think, is our fault. I think we, as a group, as an industry, as educators, we need to do more to promote diversity in newsrooms, particularly for financial journalism. And they need to be able to see people like them doing that job and having those opportunities to see it's possible and it's a great career. And that's, I think, super important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Ellen, do you want to?
I'm hoping that a game changer is going to be when the movie version of She Said, the Jodi Kantor, Megan Twohey, New York Times investigative reporters breaking the Harvey Weinstein scandal, when that comes to movie screens in the fall with a Hollywood cast, could be the business journalism equivalent of All the President's Men, which I saw when I was 13 years old and made me want to be a journalist. But I also agree that the role models are great. My campus now has put little banners all around the campus with alumni who are doing great things in the world. And it's alumni not just from journalism, from all kinds of fields. But journalism, we have far more than our fair share. And they walk by, and they see, and Alexa Art at the Washington Post, and they, and it's there, and it's like wow, maybe that can be me. That's someone who graduated just a few years ago.
I think too, it doesn't have to be just business. It can be business and investigative, business and sports, business and politics, because money is everywhere. I mean, if you're interested in sports, having to, understanding how a contract is written, how it's executed, how the NBA makes money. Oh my gosh, look at the NFL. Look at Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady is set after he's done playing football. He's going to go and work, right? And so knowing that it's not, business is not a vertical, it's a horizontal. It cuts across a lot of different spots. So we actually have a question for all of you, too, is we want to know how you feel we can get more students in the pipeline. We are eager for your input and your thoughts in addition to your questions, but if you have any suggestions for all of us, we are happy to take them and execute them.
So I could go first. Oliver Staley, business editor of The Observer, and Desi's heard me talk about this before, and maybe all of you have. I think one of the pitches I make when I interview people is to ask them, are you interested in social justice? Are you interested in inequality? Well, if you are, you should cover business because that's the source of all the things all these ills in the world. Business is, I think, my impression is a lot of young people feel the role of a business reporter is like to fluff up the pillows of business, and I think it's just the opposite. I think we should be comforting the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And I think, the clearer that is made, that it's an opportunity, to really go after the big actors who are causing a lot of the problems in this world, the more appealing the role becomes.
I think the students see that too. At least in the class I teach, it's reporting and writing about the economy. We look at the data from different economic indicators, and we've created our own economic indicator, and from that they can see sort of how their peers feel about certain things, and they're able to tell those stories, and they see the data, but they see how the data is about real people, and they find those real people and they tell those stories, and exactly what you're talking about is exactly what they see. And I think that is really exciting because they're going to take it in new directions that we've not taken it in the past, right? I think they are inspired by that. I think they're idealistic young people, right? Like we were that once. We might not remember that, but we were probably. And yet I think they see more in better ways than maybe I did when I was their age, what they can do with that and the power they have to do with that. So that's a great point.
I think, when the unemployment number comes out that first Friday, we all see the headline number, right? It's the one thing that comes out and sends out the alerts. And I say to students, you need to dig into the tables because that's really where the statistics are. And there's that very first table, that breaks down the unemployment rate by race, gender, and education. There are, hundreds of stories, right? It's like, oh my gosh, okay, look at the trend line. There's a story there. That's kind of what you were saying, Oliver, right? Here's what the unemployment rate is for any given demographic, and you're off and running. So.
Well, that's actually an assignment in my econ classes. They have to look at, when the employment numbers have to come out, they have to look at the, breakdown and then understand it. And then the final project in econ this semester has been, they write about social inequality and justice in economics, or climate change in economics, or various other, topics like that, the American dream in economics. And so then they have to look into the root economic causes of those particular things. And so it really kind of inspires them. So, I just feel good that I can pretty much touch almost all of our journalism students with some level of business reporting.
I think the social justice cause it would be easier for us if the feds actually put some white-collar criminals in jail. I mean, really, when I was starting out as an intern and as a cub reporter, I was an intern at the Wall Street Journal. You had Jim Stewart, and they were, was exposing Michael Milken and Ivan Boesky, and these people were going to jail, and these were, the masters of the universe on Wall Street. You saw the incredible impact that it had. And from my generation of reporters, I reported on, on Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, and the tech giants now are impervious. I think from the nonprofit panel, was it Julie Anglin was talking about how they're almost beyond control of governments, and in the media we haven't. We've done great reporting. We've done great investigations. I don't think it's been having the demonstrable political, social impact. And Me Too is probably an exception.
So my suggestion would be my name is Karen Ho, and I'm a freelance reporter. I would say that for your students of color, emphasizing that business journalism helps reduce the amount of hiring discrimination in the industry has been very effective when I'm mentoring younger students. Now, my question is related to that, which is that a lot of the journalism schools in the United States have been increasing their international enrollment, but there is a lot of lack of transparency about which institutions are willing to hire people beyond their optional practical training one-year terms. And while business journalism is more often likely to do that, there is a lot of inconsistency about even what kind of advice for people where to apply for jobs, because oftentimes places will not hire people unless they have green cards or citizenship. And I wanted to know, as educators who are seeing this growing number of international students who are paying a lot of money, quite frankly, and are thinking about the economics of their education, how you are addressing this issue.
I think you're right. There is a lot of lack of transparency, and there's also a lack of transparency, I think, in our industry. We don't have much data on demographics in financial journalism. We don't have much information on salaries. We just don't have a lot of data. And this is something at the Reynolds Center at ASU where we're trying to do. And it's something that I would like to ask your help with, is to start collecting demographic data on our industry, who we are, and then salaries data. And I think this will at least start a discussion about what we need to do. We need to have the data, and then we need to have the discussion. But as I think Marty said, I also want to show potential financial journalists that the money's pretty good, and they can get it too. So this is something that we're going to start to collect data on this at the Reynolds Center. We will be asking you guys for some help with completing a survey on your demographics. I don't know if is the QR code? The QR code is up there. So this QR code will lead you to a link. It's an anonymous survey. We've hired Qualtrics and a market research company to help us with this. It will take only a few minutes, less than 5 minutes, and this will help us start this discussion. And we will be sharing the results of this survey with all of you as soon as within the next couple of weeks. And in the next CEBU seminar, hopefully we can have a discussion about this. So please do help us with this.
I want to answer your question directly, though. I have found that certain companies like CNBC are very transparent. They won't hire people who are not. And some are, Bloomberg might, and Bloomberg has hired a lot of my international students, as is Dow Jones. So it just kind of depends on that. But we usually, I suggest my students make that the second question. And one Chinese student, because we run this 2+2 program at the Communications University of China and with Jingling College as well in Nanjing, we have a lot of Chinese students who are looking to stay in the United States for jobs. And so we have an early and often conversation about hiring. And I steer people away from people who aren't going to help them with that process. And towards organizations that will. And we have a lot of conversations too about the exact kind of jobs that they can expect. So, if they want to stay in the United States.
In South Carolina, we don't have really very many international students. We have a few in our graduate program, but it's not really a graduate program for journalism, so I can't speak to that specific issue, though I do agree that is something that we all need to be more transparent about before people make the decision to come here and spend the money on education. But we were talking about diversity, and I want to talk a little bit about students of color, because I live in a state, South Carolina, where the 30% of the population is Black, but less than 10% of the university population is Black. And at the journalism school, it's about 9%. This spring was the first time I had a Black man in my reporting class, which is a class that's required of all journalism majors. That is an issue. And in part because people of color, we were talking earlier today about how people don't trust media. People of color in particular don't trust media. And so we at the journalism school know that we have a pipeline problem. And when we have a pipeline problem, you have a pipeline problem. And so this is something that we do need to talk about, and not just, we need to talk about and work together and work together to build trust in media at the K through 12 level. Right? And that's where our interests align to help us create a pipeline for journalism schools, which will then create a pipeline for you. And then also, like I was saying before, is to create opportunities for young people while they're still excited about journalism to get into journalism and stay. Have a newsroom culture that they want to stay in. If we do not figure this out, we will not turn this around. I think this is our number one issue, right? And it's all tied together. And we kind of sit in the middle of it. And that's, to me, when I think about the pipeline, that's it in a nutshell.
I mean, it's a larger issue within all of journalism. It's not just business journalism. It is definitely an issue in business journalism. But we have a lot of work in our industry to have tough conversations, even, at our schools. Start having conversations that might be difficult for us as educators to have, but our students are hungry for those conversations. They want those conversations, and quite frankly, we need to have those conversations with them, and we owe it to them. They are at our schools. They came to our schools for a reason. They didn't come to dodge bigger questions. And we can't dodge them either. We have a lot of work to do. And I think the good news is that it's clear to schools that there is a lot of work to do, but now it needs to get done, to your point.
Hey, I think I have the mic, so I'll steal the next one. I'm Heather Long from the Washington Post, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how some of the bigger media organizations can better connect with you and your students. I think for a long time, many of us and the bigger media organizations have this feeling that we're so big and so great that people will just come to us, that we don't really have to market ourselves, or we don't really need to be on the recruiting circuit, I mean, we get thousands of applications for our internships or whatever, but then we also scratch our heads about why we get the same type of applicants from the same schools over and over again. And so I'm just curious, how often do you get calls? Marty, you were talking a little bit about getting calls. How often do you get calls from editors from big publications or producers from big publications, or what would your advice be? Or, in our company, we send tons of people to the AAJA or, these types of NABJ types of conferences, but we're still not necessarily connecting with new audience, new recruits. So
I have to say I'm on texting first name basis with the recruiters at CNBC who've been really wonderful about opening up a lot of channels to people, business journalists who are different. They are really great in diversity, including LGBTQ plus, and it was kind of a point of pride when I was looking at seeing who was covering COVID for CNBC. 2 alums, who were covering, fairly recent out of school, who were pulling part of some of the heavy coverage for CNBC, and so and actually that's the best thing. So I do get a lot of great calls from a lot of people saying, "Hey, do you know?" In fact, I certainly have had people just pick up the phone and say, I'm looking for a diverse hire, who you got?" And I know that's kind of old school recruiting, but it does work. And some people get really awesome jobs out of this. And so I have to hand it to all of you, all the editors here who do reach out from time to time and say, how can we make things work? In fact, the kid that I was talking about who got the job at Endpoints News, that was because Endpoints News reached out to me and said, "We want to take interns now. Who do you have you can give us now?" So.
I think the best thing that the large newsrooms can do is have people who are dedicated to hiring.
Yeah.
Because I think we were all talking about earlier, when you're juggling news and you're trying to vet candidates, you're doing it, it's impossible. It's really hard to do it well. So you need a team, and I think good recruiting, good networking is about the long game, just like all of you with sourcing, right? It's about long-term conversations. You're not talking with someone about a job today. You're talking with someone and building those relationships for the long term, because eventually maybe you're going to want to hire them in your newsroom. And so that's why you need a dedicated team for that. And on the school side, what I need to do better at my school, and I see a lot of other schools because I was in that recruiting role before, what I see the schools not doing is staying really well connected with all of their alumni. Because it's not just my current students or my recent grads you're interested in, it's the ones who've been in the workforce for a few years that you're interested in. And I need to do a better job of keeping track of them.
And don't just think of reporters either.
That's right.
I've had some of my best placements with, thank you, SP Global. SP Global has been hiring a lot of our editors over the years, young people who don't want a reporting career, want an editing career. And I've had a tremendous amount of success working for SP Global. One of my former students, she didn't know what she wanted to do. She wanted to edit. And I said, well, there's an internship at SP Global. Would you like that? Sure. Loved it. Then they opened up an office in Centennial, Colorado. She raised her hand. They had an opening in their office in Dublin. She raised her hand. During the pandemic, she moved back to Chicago. So, it's really been awesome. And I've had so many students also move on from business journalism into the business itself. Youngest ever analyst for Wells Fargo was a 2015 grad, right? And now she's a vice president for investor relations for a pharma company. So, in a really rapid time, she really went from being an intern at Bloomberg to hitting it out of the park.
And I'd also say, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'd just also say, think about coming to speak. Look at all the great cities we represent here, right?
Well,
Reno, Missouri, Phoenix.
It's true.
So, come visit, do a guest lecture,
Yeah.
help mentor some of these students. You will love it. These are some fantastic kids.
and
if
I
you
don't-
need a break
Yeah.
and want to share your experience, tell these people how you got there, the struggles, they'd love it, and you would love it too.
And I take my class in New York, so if I haven't hit your media organization when I brought them to New York, including chartering a bus to go over to New Jersey to CNBC, that really kind of sells them too.
I think we have time for one last question.
Hello? Can I ask a question?
Two questions? Okay.
I'm Myron Candell, formerly of CNN. I've been a business journalist for more than 50 years. And I'm not going to ask a question, I'm going to make an observation. I am absolutely bowled over by the quality of you 5 on that stage. It gives me great hope for the future of business journalism to see the people like you who are teaching the next generation of journalists. Keep at it.
Thank you. Well, you're gonna make us cry. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
tell my students
Yeah,
that.
really, thank you. Thanks. One last,
Hi there, Kimberly Johnson with the Wall Street Journal. I'm also the co-chair of the Business Journalism Task Force for NABJ, a bit of a nascent task force. My first question from earlier was, how do you talk to your students about local and regional newspapers? And do you just tell them to go to the B2B publications, considering, we've had a shrinking of our great local and regional newspapers over the years? And that's really where you get a lot of the great skills. You're pounding the pavement that I think you really need to be a star in many ways at some of the larger publications, and you sort of grow and you can walk into great beats at larger publications. And secondly, regarding the diversity in business journalism, it is extremely hard. I will actually say that it's very hard with NABJ, where the fame and the money is with sports and entertainment journalism, and so there's not, when you're working with people who haven't experienced business journalism themselves as journalists, it's very hard to convince them that that is a place that there needs to be a great deal of professional development. So if any of you have any ideas, I'm welcome.
I'll say, Medill has a local news initiative. Medill has made it a priority to really focus in on local news. We've all seen so many publications, so many newspapers close, and so we've really made a commitment to that, and we involve students in that. Tim Franklin runs that initiative, and it's become very important. And I think as students get involved in that, we certainly know how important it is, at our level. But the students get it, they realize that they don't have to go to a very large national or international publication. And in fact, that's where they can get into local news, and they can really have an impact, an immediate impact. And so they kind of get hooked on local news. And it's nice to be able to see that, see that happen. And I will say, I talked to J.A. Adande, and J.A. and I will be like, money and sports and money. And so how can we mix the two? And again, I think we have to do a better job of saying money, business is horizontal, it's not vertical. Yeah. And so if you want to do something else, you have to know where the money is coming from and going to.
I'm going to take your question a little bit. We hadn't talked about local television. And one of the things that we realize in local journalism is that we used to dismiss the local TV reporting staff because, after all, the local newspaper staff was far bigger. Guess what? Not anymore. Okay, so in fact, a lot of local TV really beefed up their staff. So one of the things, because Missouri has such a strong broadcast program, because we own our own NBC affiliate in town, so we get a lot. I make an effort to really infuse a lot of our broadcast students with a lot of business reporting. And so, and in fact, not a week goes by that I don't get a call from one of the KOMU reporters saying, "Psst, hey, would you school me on pensions, some sort of business topic?" I frequently give them really easy stories to do that deal with BLS data or with the like, because I think it's really important. So we have a lot of our students of color are often choose broadcast as a major because there's a lot of role models in broadcast. And so I really kind of make an effort. And so sometimes I have big wins. One of my reporters who works for a station in Omaha finally scored an interview with Warren Buffett. And he said, "I just wanted to do this for you, Marty," because he knows that he used to come in my office and see that picture of me and Warren together. So, he said, "I wanted to do this for you." And I'm really glad you did it for yourself, actually. So.
Thank you. I know there's so many questions, but let's give it up for the educators out here. This is where it starts for so many people. I had great teachers at NYU, and I'm so grateful to have the students here too. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.